Imagine a place where the sky is a kiln and the earth is a furnace, a landscape that refuses to let anything live. By all laws of nature, this should be a wasteland, a void on the map where history goes to die of thirst. But hidden within these red walls lies a ghost, a city that defied the desert for 500 years. To find it, one must pass through a crack in the world, a passage so narrow the sun only visits for an hour a day. This is Petra, a metropolis of 20,000 souls, built in a place with no permanent river and no rain. It was the impossible capital of the Nabataeans, a people who didn't just survive the desert, they owned it. Their secret was not magic, nor was it luck. It was the most sophisticated logistical mind the ancient world had ever seen. Before we continue, please subscribe and like the video. This will greatly help the channel, and you will receive new exciting stories every day. They looked at the dry rock and saw pipes. They looked at the flash floods and saw a bank account of life. Once a year, the sky would break. Violent walls of water would scream through these canyons, bringing only death. But the engineers were ready. They built a net made of stone. They captured the flood and forced the desert to give up its prize. Along the walls of the Sikh, the Nabataeans carved a lifeline, a continuous gutter, miles long, angled with mathematical precision. The gradient was set at a constant 4% slope, just enough to keep the water moving, but slow enough to prevent it from bursting the stone. In places where the open air would steal the water through evaporation, they used pipes, thousands of interlocking sections of terracotta clay. They understood fluid dynamics. They created pressurized systems that allowed water to flow uphill, defying the very gravity that should have kept them dry. To stop the porous sandstone from drinking the water, they lined every inch with waterproof lime plaster. It was the tech of the first century. They built settling tanks. These were the kidneys of the city, trapping the desert's sand and silt so the drinking water remained pure. On the high ridges above the city, every mountain peak was a funnel. Every flat surface was a catchment for the rare, precious morning dew. Beneath the city lay a mirror world, enormous cisterns hidden from the sun, capable of holding millions of gallons of water. While their enemies outside the walls died of thirst, the citizens of Petra lived in a garden. They had fountains, they had baths, they had life. To the Romans and the Greeks, this was impossible. Petra was a mirage made of stone, a city that had tamed the sky. To an outsider, Petra appeared as a death trap of dry stone. Invading armies would look at these gates and see only a city already defeated by thirst. But the Nabataeans were watching. They understood that in the desert, information is as valuable as water. They used the sun to signal from peak to peak. Outside the city, they built vast basins that appeared to be nothing more than natural dry depressions. In reality, they were artificial lakes. They dug secret wells, hundreds of feet deep, and capped them with stones that matched the surrounding desert. Only a Nabataean knew where to dig. Empires came to conquer. The Greeks, the Seleucids, the early Romans. They all fell victim to the same trap, the belief that there was no water to be found. Their greatest enemy was the flood. In seconds, a dry creek could become a battering ram of mud and boulders. They didn't fight the flood. They invited it in. They carved tunnels through the mountains to shunt the death water away from their homes. This diverted water was not wasted. It was stored in deep, cool grottos where the sun could never reach it, a reserve for the years of drought. Water was their currency. It was the gold of the desert. To control the water was to control the life of the entire region. And with this water, they built a civilization of leisure. They carved a theater for 6,000 people, where they told stories of the sea. Every corner of Petra whispered with the sound of running water. Public fountains, known as nympheums, stood as monuments to their victory over the sun. Their maps were not of roads, but of pressures. They calculated the weight of the water to ensure it reached every terrace and every garden. In the heart of the desert, they grew grapes, they grew olives. They created an oasis that was purely the product of human logic. To maintain these systems, they created a class of water guardians. Their only job was to ensure the pipes never clogged and the plaster never cracked. They lived with a constant awareness of the water. It was a sacred trust, passed down from father to son for generations. They watched the clouds. Even a single gray wisp on the horizon was a signal to prepare the catchments and open the gates. As the word of the city of water spread, the world came to trade. Petra became the essential hub of the incense route. They traded the water they saved for the resins of the south, frankincense from Saba, myrrh from the edges of the Indian Ocean. Petra began to smell of the Orient. The scent of burning resins filled the canyons, mingling with the spray of the fountains. It was a city of the world, a place where the silk of the East met the glass of the West, all sustained by the secret water of the red rocks. Every merchant who entered Petra paid a price, not just in gold, but in water rights. To drink from the city's wells was a privilege bought with trade. A camel can drink 30 gallons in minutes. In Petra, that water was accounted for with the precision of a modern bank. These were the hotels of the ancient world, safe, hydrated, and heavily taxed. The Nabataeans were the masters of the service economy. They became fabulously wealthy. Their kings were not warriors, but CEOs of a vast hydrological and commercial empire. As their wealth grew, so did their desire for immortality. They turned the mountains into a city of the dead, more grand than the city of the living. They carved from the top down. To build these monuments, they didn't use scaffolding. They used the mountain itself, peeling back the stone layer by layer. The stone itself was a masterpiece. Nature had painted these walls with iron and manganese, creating patterns that looked like frozen clouds. In the north, a new power was growing. Rome had conquered the sea, and now they looked toward the desert. They didn't want Petra's gold. They wanted its water. They understood that to rule the East, they had to control the pumps. The last great king of Petra saw the end coming. He realized that a city of merchants could not fight a city of legions. There was no war. In 106 AD, Petra was annexed. The impossible city became the Roman province of Arabia. The Romans brought their own genius. They built a grand colonnaded street, but they kept the Nabataean pipes. They knew a masterpiece when they saw it. Petra became a Roman garden. The population peaked. For a moment, It was the most luxurious city in the Roman East. They built a pool larger than an Olympic stadium. In the middle of the desert, people went swimming. It was the ultimate display of power. The imagery of the city changed. The desert people began to dream of the ocean they now served. For a century, the wealth was unimaginable. Petra was the gateway through which all the luxuries of the world passed. But even a city that owns the water cannot control the tides of history. The world was beginning to change. The Romans discovered the secrets of the monsoon winds. They realized they didn't need the desert camels anymore. They could sail directly to India. The incense route began to dry up. The great caravans that once fueled Petra's wealth were diverted to the ports. Slowly, the sound of the camel bells faded. The main street of the world was becoming a backwater. Wealth is a shy guest. When the trade left, the money followed. The grand palaces of Petra began to feel the first touch of decay. Maintenance is a luxury of the rich. As the coffers emptied, the invisible grid of water began to fail. The stone net started to fray. The gardens died first. The emerald terraces turned back to the color of the mountains, blood and dust. Then, in 363 AD, the earth itself revolted. A massive earthquake shattered the city, breaking the great dams and crushing the cisterns. The city survived, but it was broken. The spirit of the Nabataeans, once so resilient, was fading along with their water. Petra became a city of monks and hermits. The gods of the mountain were replaced by the god of the cross. It was a city in twilight, a beautiful fading ghost waiting for the desert to reclaim it. By the 7th century, the city was almost empty. The water was gone, the trade was gone, and the world had moved on. The desert is patient. It used the wind to bury the secrets of the Nabataeans, one grain of sand at a time. To the local tribes, Petra was no longer a city. It was a place of ghosts, a labyrinth of stone that only they knew how to navigate. For 1,000 years, Petra was lost to the Western world. It became a myth, a rose-red city that existed only in the tales of travelers. The Crusaders built a small outpost here, but even they didn't realize the scale of what lay beneath them. They were just passing through. Petra had become the ultimate secret, a city hidden in a crack, protected by its own impossible geography. He had heard rumors of a magnificent city hidden in the mountains of Wadi Musa. To find it, he had to become a ghost himself. He pretended he wanted to sacrifice a goat to the prophet Aaron. He walked through the darkness, expecting a trap at every turn. He couldn't stay. He couldn't take measurements. He had only a few minutes to memorize a millennium of history. The world returned, but this time they didn't come for water or spices. They came for the story. We look at Petra today and see a monument, but we must remember it was a machine, a logical, functioning engine of survival. We are learning the lesson they perfected, that human ingenuity is the only thing stronger than the sun. Petra is a rose-red city half as old as time, but it is also a warning, a reminder of what happens when the logic of a city fails. We come here to feel small. We come here to see what a people can do with nothing but rock and a dream of water. The Nabataeans are gone. Their empire is dust. But the crack in the world remains: logic, ingenuity, resilience. These are the foundations of the impossible city. It was a city with no water, and yet it was the city that mastered the rain. If you like the story, give it a like and subscribe to get an even more interesting story tomorrow. Tonight, as you sleep, imagine the red walls. Imagine the hidden indigo water. Imagine the city that refused to die. Good night, Petra. Good night to the dreamers of the desert.